welcome back to Snap Publishing, where we discuss the secrets of Edward Leeds Gowland's Coral Castle, how it pertains to the biblical narrative, the periodic table, the zodiac, and DNA. All right, so I'm going to do a quick vid on something Alex Jones said, and I'm not a hater. It's the same as when I talked about Elon Musk making his statement on Joe Rogan. Don't ask me where Alex said it. I know he said it. So he said, God does not know where God came from. And I want to address that. Because it's predominantly a Gnostic belief. If you're into Gnosticism, which means knowing, okay? But Gnostics believe all kinds of crazy stuff, and you see a lot of their material in Hollywood movies and Netflix and all these other Prime Video, these little small series that they put out. It's all weaved in there. You don't get a script in Hollywood unless you put in anti-gun stuff and Gnostic beliefs and just outright Satanistic Luciferian beliefs. They will not give you the script writers won't work with you. There's a lot of things that they will 8-ball you. You won't even get your foot in the door. So the Gnostics believe God, who we understand as God the Father, was created. He's a demiurge. And this is brought out in the Marvel comic series, by the way. I believe it's in the Doctor Strange series. That weird dragon type thing that's out in space, and it's very evil and dark. But I'm not saying that is it. I'm saying that is a type of it, okay? It's in my opinion also. Anytime you hear me speak, it's in my opinion. I'm not speaking for that company and that brand. But this demiurge hates humans. It's a hater. It's the ultimate hate. It's a hate machine. And it has no compassion and yada, yada, yada. And it was created by one of the original gods, was Sophia. So once you get some education in life, and you got some walking around sense, because you got a few years under your belt, you realize what horseshit Gnosticism is. Because Sophia is philosophy. If you listen to the word letter etymology in the word philosophy, you hear the name Sophia. So Sophia represents communism, Nazism, collectivism, all the isms. And it also represents religions, which religions, okay, now organized religion is important. If it wasn't for organized religions and certain other groups, people would engage in just killing off whole groups of people. They would purge whole countries of certain groups of people. So these spiritual belief systems morphed into religions to protect those people. So when you get into the militant arm of Christianity, that came predominantly through the Roman Catholics. You saw it in the beginning with the Protestants who came and swept across America, and they fought the Native Americans, quote unquote. I don't believe the Native Americans were natives. They were people that integrated and then eventually took over. But the mound builders were the original Americans, and we don't know who they displaced. So when Native Americans say, we're the natives, no, you're not. You displaced people just like people were displaced previous to you getting there. And the people coming from Europe displaced you, and that's just the way life is. And you just have to move on and say, it is what it is. But I'm not saying they don't have rights. I'm not saying that they don't. They were clearly, they made agreements with the government, and the government broke that. I definitely agree that is 100% infallible truth. And their land was stolen from them in many cases. But I don't want to go down that road. But the isms, the philosophy that Sophia represents is just a belief system. And there's ultimate truths that all the big religions are based upon. Judeo-Christianity is based in the Judeo system, which predominantly came out of the Egyptian system, and it was corrupted by the Babylonian system. If you read about after Nebuchadnezzar sacked Jerusalem and led the Hebrews into captivity, and then later on the Assyrians did it. But the Assyrians ended up being very good to the Jews, and they allowed them to rebuild the temple. That's what the book of Daniel covers. But the philosophy is it's human reasoning and human thought. And it can be based in the ultimate truths that the original big systems of belief came from. Hinduism, Buddhism came out of Hinduism. The legends that we talked about in Hamlet's Mill that the Norwegians extrapolated from the Greeks and the Enuma Elish. And so we already covered those. I'm not going to go down that road. But so the Gnostics are saying that God came from a woman, number one, and God came from a philosophy. So they're basically saying that we created God. No. So when Alex Jones said that, I'm not sure if he did it consciously, and he knows that he's quoting from one of the crux of the beliefs of Gnosticism. But it also ties into Luciferian doctrine, which is Jesus is Baphomet, secretly, covertly disguised. They're the same guy. That's their holy belief. And we now see through my work, with this building right here, we see that H3 is up in the Holy of Holies, H2 is in the middle, and H1's down here outside the outer court. So we know that that's crap. You can't argue with the periodic table. Lucifer, light bearer, is hydrogen 1 predominantly, but he has the ability to morph into other things. That's some of these cryptids that people recorded many, many years ago before technology. And we see them in sparse sightings. Today you're seeing them in droves because the U.S. government has figured out how to create them through robotics, advanced robotics, and also genetic splices. Okay? So today you can't believe anything because the government, they have some amazing stuff that they're about to unveil in the form of, oh, hey, we're being visited for the first time, first contact. I call it fake first contact. Don't want to get into it. But the Alex Jones may not. I don't know if he grew up Gnostic. But God was not created by a woman because the female is the minus. It's attractiveness. It's space. And the male is Jesus' cross, the plus, which is repulsive. And it's always living in the future. It never dwells on the past. That's why God is in the forgiveness business. People I don't know if I can trust God to forgive me. You can trust God. Of all the things you can trust to forgive you, God is the way to go. The devil just likes to dwell on the past. You ever notice that? But man and God, they're always thinking forward in the future. Even when a man's sitting there pondering and his wife's like, what are you thinking about? What are you thinking about? Why are you just sitting there? He's thinking. It's true. But they're thinking of the past, fearful things. They're living in a state of, oh my God, I got to build the nest. They're the nest builders. Okay? Guys are always like, I've got this. I just have to figure it out. And they dwell in the future potential, the infinite future potential. It's branches into just a myriad of branches. I have fingers on top of fingers on top of fingers, like root systems into the future. So that's why God appears as a man. And there are times where God does use the female, but that's so our pea brains can wrap our minds around the magnificence of the creation of God. And I'll get into what this represents: the creation of God, the periodic order, the zodiac, Cartesian coordinate system, DNA. But God is not there. Like if you read about in Elijah in the cave, and Elijah was told by God, go to the front of the cave and look out. It was an earthquake, and the rocks broke. but God wasn't in the earthquake. And then there was a huge whirlwind, but God wasn't in the whirlwind. And then there was a fire, and God wasn't in the fire. And then a voice said to Elijah, Elijah, what are you doing here? See how a man's mind works? Right? And then that little female side of him, the little beta male's like, hey, I'm the only one in Israel doing the right thing. Oh, poor me. And God said, Elijah, what are you doing here? The still small voice inside of him was like, hey, man, you got to get out of here. The future's out there, man. That's the past. Okay? So, I'm not saying women don't have a place. Okay? I'm just saying that 90-something%, I won't say it's 95 or 98, and there's times where it's 80% of the time God deals in the male. And it has nothing to do with hating women, being a misogynist, blah, 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 blah. There's nothing to do with that. It has to do with men are wired differently. Women have their function, men have theirs. And God identifies with this. Once the bullet leaves the gun, it's not part of the gun anymore. Once that bullet leaves that rifle, that's God. Dwelling that way, not that way. So, let me get into... Sophia is merely philosophy and religion, all man-made creations and constructs. Neither philosophy nor anything related to the female attractive force can create God. God exists as a positive repulsive force predominantly and shows us the female facet so that we might wrap our pea-sized brains around the concept of God. You have to have a framework, is what I'm saying. If you didn't have this, even half of this that they show you in your textbooks, all right, even that half that they say, oh, this is all there is. Don't pay any attention to that crazy guy. Now I'm showing you this, and then the one with the 4 that I showed you previously. Right? It never stops. I can keep going with this. I showed you that graphic on my phone of the man who took Edward Leeds Gallin's little, it looks like a fleur-de-lis or something, and he realized, oh, this forms a pattern. Good man. John Dupree or something. Can't think of his name. So, you have to have that frame, length, width, and breadth. If you didn't have that structure, you'd be lost. You'd be living in the Stone Age. So God enables all this creation, just thinks it into existence. And he takes it out of the inorganic. It existed in the inorganic, okay? Things that we can't eat, we can't consume. And he turned it into the organic form, the water-soluble forms that our body can work with. And these two sides, one ladder of your DNA, one half of the ladder, they're able to join forces and shake hands. And Jesus represents that. I'll get into that in a minute. But when that creation became what it is, that creation turned on God and started saying, well, we must be God. And we create the concept of God, therefore we must be greater than God. You have to realize how stupid to believe that is. And when you read the Bible the way somebody explains it to you, like Revelation chapter 14, verse 4, that's literally 144. I'll get into that in a minute. You realize, yeah, when the stonecutters say, oh, we wrote the Bible. No way. There's no way. The odds of them penning that book to the precision that it has is 10 to the upper function 25, which is all the known matter in the universe. There's just no way they did it. Okay, and there's no way they built the pyramids. No way. It was built without hands. We already talked about it. But anyway, things like philosophies, Lucifer, Sophia, they can be easily pointed to by people and explained. I can explain that without even breaking a sweat. It's like looking at something written on the back of my hand. We realize now Lucifer is hydrogen-1 protium, and it's a finite created being. Philosophy, it's also easily explained. So what you have to realize is Jesus took on our form. and was born of a virgin birth so that he would be blameless in all ways. So God entered into the woman to bring women into the fold more than they already were, even though Job had already laid down the law and said, hey, you got to include your sisters in with the brothers' inheritance. But people didn't listen. So now God was stressing that point even more so. And we see the clock about to strike 12, and it's going to go to Aquarius. And you better pay attention, because now Aquarius is opposite of Leo. All right? And that's the female. Okay? And the Egyptians called them Ra and Ka. But you have to realize that the female influence is going to be even more powerful than it already was. I'm not saying they outpower men, or they have more powers than men. That's all hogwash. That's what Gnostics believe. I'm saying that you're about to find out that these forces will come to bear even stronger than they already are. The attractive force will be even more attractive than it already is. So Jesus comes into this life, this dimension, and became like us, and then was crucified and went into I call it the Greek underworld. It's the lower levels of Noah's Ark, or the lanthanide actinide, and that's what the teal green, the white, and the black represent. Jesus is the teal green between the black and the white. He's neodymium, and he's hanging on his cross between the two thieves. Who are the two thieves? Prometheum's on one side, that's Elijah, and he stole fire from the gods. He brought the Holy Spirit, the knowledge of the third member of the Godhead, to the Hebrew belief. Up until that point, the Hebrews started out as monotheists, and then they realized, no, there's more to God. They took Yahweh and he morphed into Jehovah. And then there was Jehovah Nissi, Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Sidkenu. They started giving Jehovah a bunch of different names. So God was appearing in different forms. They believe the first appearance of Jesus was Melchizedek appearing to Abraham, or Abram. I think it was Abraham at that point. But anyway, so they call that a theophany, where Jesus appeared before he hung on the cross, before he came to Israel and back in the day. He had a few times where he appeared to, I believe, Joshua. He definitely appeared to Moses. So they begin to realize, hey, wait a minute. And another scripture tells us God the Father is green. Somebody went into the throne room and they looked and they saw the Father and Son, and they said, well, he's the color of an emerald. I believe it was an emerald green. And he's the color of, what do you call it? Amber, which is that, it's like tree sap. It's the yellowish gold, like honey. It's the color of honey. They had different colors. Okay, but you couldn't tell the one from the other than the fact that they had different colors emanating from them. So, and I could go down that road for a long time, what that green represents. Okay, if you read Song of Songs, Song of Solomon, it's in there. It says our bed is green. Okay, and there's a person in mythology they call the Green Man. And people, even Satanist pagans do not understand what the Green Man is. Okay, and that's another one that they use to say, oh, see, that's the devil. God is the devil. No, he's not. You're wrong. You're a dum-dum. Have some gum-gum. When you see the fine structure constant, you understand the fine structure constant, that physicists are like, what is this? It keeps appearing in our math. It keeps appearing in astrophysics. That's part of it. So there's the jealousy that causes rage and murder, and then there's that zealous. And the Hebrews, you look up the word zealous in ancient Hebrew or Hebrew, and I'm sure Aramaic is the same. It's the same word as jealousy, but it's spelt totally different. One is a Z, the other is a J. Zealousness comes from up here. Jealousy comes from down here. Huge difference. So God's green up here, folks, cannot be the green from down here. The green, I've talked about this before. It's The nanometer measurement of this form of light is 486.1. There's another type of red light. It's 656.3. That's almost 666, isn't it? And it's found throughout the whole universe. Everywhere. It's rose red light. And if you read the Song of Songs, it says, my beloved is red and white and chiefest among 10,000. 10,000 what? 10,000 pyramids on Earth and 10,000 spectra, because they say if you look at the spectra of light, the possible color possibilities throughout that line, there's 10,000 of them. So when it says he's red and white and chiefest among 10,000, CATT, that's a tiger. It's a striped red and white cat. Okay? He's identifying with what? A tiger, not a lion. Right? It's the Lion of Judah. And Satan is also a roaring lion that's looking for victims. The Bible describes two lions, the Lion of Judah and what? Satan. So why would God say, okay, if I got to choose which cat I'm going to be, he's going with tiger. And do you know that tigers come in several different colors? Right? You got the Siberians, which at certain times of year, they turn the blue-gray. All right? And same thing with the, there's another cat, the Siberian, snow leopard. My editor said snow leopard. So anyway, and you also notice these colors are part of the aurora. Auroras come mainly in the red and green, but there's a very rare time where they come in blue. And scientists are pretty stumped why that happens. Okay? And a blue aurora is the same as like a blue cat, a blue mountain lion, or a blue leopard, or a blue tiger. People were like, hey, I saw a blue tiger. They'd be like, what? Get out of here. It was a rare sighting for the world. You had to be from that area to realize, oh yeah, that's what they do. Because, so what that represents is somebody who's like Henry Cavill, Chris Hemsworth, Alan Ritchson. That's the guy women dream about. He's my dreamboat. He's that guy that they just attain. They hope they attain to that someday. Okay? And above all that is Jesus. These men are a type that they're leading up to that type of anomaly. Like something that just exists in fantasy land. But I don't want to go down that road. I've covered a little bit of that in other videos. So anyway, Jesus goes into the lower second and third stories of the Noah's Ark, I call it. Like this would be the upper level of Noah's Ark where all the fun petable animals are. Then you got your lower second and third stories. So you got one down the middle, center line. Two is down here. And three, technically 3, 4, but 3 is down here. These animals here, not so petable. These down here are the creepy crawlies. So Jesus left up here where we all are and went into the Greek underworld. Right? And by the way, this would be where they buried him. Right? That's the temporary sarcophagus that he occupied, where they rolled away the stone. That's the well at Bahurim. 2 Samuel chapter 17, 18? Or 1 Samuel, I can't remember. Anyway, Bahurim, look it up. That's the element barium. So now Jesus is down here in the underworld doing what? He didn't sin, so the grave couldn't hold him, couldn't find him guilty, had to release him. So now he comes back up. He's seen of hundreds and hundreds of people, and then he ascends up on the day of ascension. He leaves the Mount of Olives and goes up. Someday he's going to return on the Mount of Olives. It's going to split down the middle, and then blood is going to be up to the horse's bridle. Do you know what that is? It's the equator on the earth. Is it going to be the equator when he does that? We don't know. But right now, that Mount of Olives that has two halves, they're together now, is the Ouroboros, the snake eating its tail, at our equator. And the Earth's going to go through these incredible changes, probably going to enlarge one more time, and prepare for the sun going into super red giant, where everyone thinks, oh, we're going to be vaporized. No, we live right through it. God takes care of his children. Didn't create biological life, didn't create human DNA and everything from human DNA, even monkeys. Oh my God, he said monkeys came from men. Yes, I did. All things, amoebas, parameciums, bacteria, came from us. Sorry, you guys are wrong. Academia, acadum-dum. You're wrong, I'm right. You can believe what you believe, I don't care. The chances of yours being correct is 10 to the 25th power. Chances of me being correct is way better. But anyway, Jesus transmutes into something we can't define. So what is Jesus made of right now? Is he carbon? Nope. Is he neodymium? Nope. Is he helium? Nope. Nobody knows. All a Christian minister can tell you is he's glorified human flesh. So the inorganic and the organic are simpatico inside of Jesus and anyone who rose with Jesus. They are the pinnacle of what all the nerds that study AI systems and are monkeying around with genetics, and they don't know what they're doing. The Bill Gates nerd types, yeah, they have no idea what they're doing. They're numbskulls. They are imbeciles with money. Trust fund kids with no brains. They got fart beans for brains. Their head is in their rear end. Jesus is exactly what they're looking for. But they pushed that out of the picture and said, oh, God doesn't exist. We're going to go on our own. And they create nothing. They waste money. They waste time. The most precious commodity there is. These people seek after the fountain of youth. Why don't you just stop being imbeciles, monkeying with things you don't know what you're doing, and admit, yeah, Jesus did go in the underworld. He did transmute and turn and came back up to the surface in some form that we can't define. That is everything we're looking for. And this is another reason Alex Jones is wrong. Because if he's saying that God doesn't know where God came from, so therefore God has a question. Hey, where did I come from? He can't be God. That just eliminates God from being God. The king, the K, is knowledge. It knows everything. The Q is queen. They're always asking questions. What about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? Blah. Who came to see Solomon? Queen of Sheba. That's Shiva. A good version of her. Bad version? Hindu Shiva. Exists in the old system. That's hydrogen 1, the devil. Same thing with Kali, Al-Kali, God Kali, the devil. That's why Christianity is a cut above. It explains this over here. The Hindus, their religion stopped. Ours went, okay, here's the New Deal. And a lot of Hindu Indians that come to America, the lights come on and they go, yes, that would make perfect sense. That the destroyer of worlds would be this inorganic form of something that is bad, detrimental. Because they had that city in India there that they know it's all vitrified rock. And all the people are dying, they're dead. They clearly were exposed to radiation. So now Jesus explains the other side of this, where he was down in where the transuranic metals, this is where the radioactive metals are. Jesus survived that. You can't do that if you're anything other than the God. And you can't have any questions either. Hey, living a religion is a fine thing. You're better off being a spiritual person and reading the Word and knowing doctrinal scripture. Because if you get it wrong, you're going to have questions when you go to the grave. You better be rock solid in your commitment and your focus. Because you're going to the ultimate authority. The devil isn't even an issue anymore. You're dealing with the one, not the zero. That's real fear. So God having the question, hey, where did I come from? Well, that means he's not God, doesn't it? By default. Alex, you're wrong. God knows exactly where God came from. God knows everything there is to know about anything. There's no question you can ask God that God can't answer. Nothing. There's no question out there that cannot be answered by God. So, yeah, by saying God doesn't know where he came from, you're buying into the Luciferian doctrine that God is hydrogen. And hydrogen came into being and became sentient, which means to perceive or feel, before all the other elements, which you cannot prove that. Here's the periodic table right here. Half of it. You can't prove that hydrogen existed before carbon. Cannot do it. I don't care what they tell you, they're full of it. And by the way, I could easily make a statement and say all elements came from carbon. And I'm just as right as they are. Did you know that? You could pick an element in that chart right there and say all elements came from neodymium. And you would know just as much about it as anyone in those colleges. I don't care what degree they have, or what they tell you, or what evidence they provide. There's no way they can prove it. And they know it. And they answer questions like that to make you think they know. And then all of a sudden data comes along and right into the trash bucket. And people give them a hall pass every time and say, oh, well, nice try. Not me. If you're going to pick an element where everything came from, you better pick carbon. I'd settle for neodymium because those are associated with Jesus. That hydrogen thing, if you say hydrogen 2, deuterium, or hydrogen 3, tritium, you might have me scratch my head because they're in the holy place in the Holy of Holies. But that hydrogen 1, no. My lug nuts did not create my truck. The nuts that hold on my wheel, yeah, my truck did not come from them. Sorry there, Mr. Darwin. You're wrong. We did not come from bacteria. No way. Okay? So, they're telling you, oh, hydrogen became sentient. That was Elon Musk's comment. And if you ask Lucifer where he came from or where it came from, I'll bet you if God's in the room, the answer he gives is going to be wrong. And God's going to pat little Lucifer on the head and go, nice try, boy. That ain't what happened. And I'm not telling you. That's the true. That's the true. So, let's see here. As soon as God has a question, they're not. Oh, yeah. God asks a lot of questions in the Bible. There's plenty of times where God's asking questions. They're rhetorical. In other words, God's setting somebody up to hear what they have to say. God already knows. Okay? And if God doesn't know, God is literally blocking with a veil. Because God can put a veil up and say, all right, I don't want to deal with... That's what hell is. Hell is contained so that God doesn't have to listen to it. Can God go into hell? Yeah, the gates of hell are open to God all the time. But God created hell because of the screaming and the disparity. And he doesn't want to listen to it. He doesn't want to listen to the belly aching because he warned for decades, millennia, centuries. The people that are in there didn't listen. So they're on their own. So if God's asking questions, he's no longer in the male image. Kings have knowledge, queens have questions. First Kings chapter 10, verse 1. By the way, look at that scripture. 10:1. That's ones and zeros, isn't it? All right. I told you earlier, I was going to talk to you about Revelation chapter 14, verse 4. Neodymium's atomic numbers are located in Song of Songs, Song of Solomon, chapter 6, verse 8. All except for the virgins without number. You have to go to Revelation 14:4 to see that. But you got 60, 80, 144. That's the atomic number for neodymium. And I brought this out, in my opinion, that's why Neo was referred to as that guy who he hacked for, and he handed out the disc out the door, and they said, hey, come to the club with us. Girl with the white rabbit. And that guy said to him, oh, thank you, man. You saved my life. You're my own personal Jesus Christ. Because Neo represents neodymium, and the Satanists are telling you, oh, hey, Neo is hydrogen 1. He's the devil. He's Jesus. All right, sorry, I had to fix the mic. So you see in the movies, in my opinion, what they're doing. They're eluding you. They're spoon-feeding you. Oh, hey, Jesus is the devil. He ain't a bad guy. No. God exists outside of all this. I got the graphic for Zodiac. There's your Zodiac, what the scientists today, mathematicians, stole and labeled. Oh, we figured that out. One of our guys did that. Cartesian coordinates, Rene Descartes. Yeah, as soon as, what were we talking about? 104, neodymium. Got off track here. But look at that scripture. Chapter 14, Revelation, verse 4, 144. What's it talking about? 144,000, 12 12s, Jewish virgin males, God takes out because they go throughout the world to say, hey, Jesus is returning. This is the second coming, quote unquote. Like I say, there was more than one time Jesus made an appearance, but this is what we call the official second one, okay? Don't want to get on that road. But each of the tribes of Israel have 12,000 men that have not known women that proselytize the world. They go out and they tell everyone, this is where the clock strikes 12, folks. God is returning and is going to rule from Jerusalem. It's a very important time that you're living in right now. And you see all the hatred directed towards Israel. Gee, I wonder why that is. They haven't changed, since 1940, whatever. They've been the same people, and yet all this vitriolic hate is pouring in the door now. Gee, I wonder why that is. And you know who one of the biggest detractors is going to be? Christianity. Has the most to lose. Islam hasn't changed, but Christianity it's going to go back to the temple worship. They have the most to lose. We already covered this different episode. So pay attention to what goes on and all this vitriolic hate and everything. I'm not saying Israel does everything hunky-dory and I'm great with whatever they do, man. I just eat it up. No. They're an evil government, just like the U.S. government, just like the Saudi Arabian government. They do underhanded stuff. They're murderers and assassins. They're greedy money grubbers. They're greedy power grubbers. They're Nancy Pelosi's. Oh, more. J. Paul Getty. I need more. Right? All for me, none for you. Eat the scraps from my chin. That's how they are. They work for these greedy, wealthy people, these trust fund kids, these spoiled brats with fat beans for brains. So when you see things like this scripture that's referring to data, artificial intelligence, and you read the Bible and it talks about this person was an artificer, instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. Instructor, artificer. That's IA. It's the opposite of AI. You got the mirror image. right? You got the AI on this side. If you do the mirror image of it, you got the IA over here. Everything in the Bible is a mirror image, or a poloidal opposite. We talked about it in the video that I made yesterday about Adonai Zedek and Adonai Bezek. Zedek, north, Bezek, south. Both men. One represents an Abraham or a Israel. Jacob became Israel. Represents those guys. The other represents Ahab and all the losers you hear about. Lot. His 2 daughters raped him. But anyway, let's roll down here. I'm going to end it with, you have to drill this into your mind that God doesn't need any of this. God exists way, way, way outside of any of these frameworks. You got your zodiac. I don't have the picture of the DNA. Picture a DNA strand. This, God doesn't need it. We do. Satan does. Lucifer does, is dependent like a little baby. I got a nurse and my mommy. That's the devil. That everyone's, oh, the devil's so powerful. He's a created being. Like we are. Has a few more little tricks. God dispensed a little more his way so he can morph into other things. But ultimately, created being of no threat to God. You cannot attack God's throne. Never going to happen. So get that in your head that outside of all this is where that's God, the dust of God's feet. God's already way beyond that. Magnitudes beyond anything you can conceive. I've already said God could buy Thanos for what he's worth and sell him for what he thinks he's worth. The Q Collective in Star Trek, same thing. He could buy them for what they're worth, sell them for what they think they're worth. All these concepts, these philosophies, these Sophias, these constructs, God is beyond anything you can conceive. They say that people who have actually gone to heaven and seen the city, where the gold is so pure you can see through it. It's glass gold. Gold glass. They hear the angels singing. I know a guy who died and he heard angels singing. And he woke up to his very godly woman wife crying her soul out in a puddle of tears. She left a puddle from crying. He fell off a ladder a long way and slammed into solid concrete. He died. And she brought him back to life. And he looked at her and he said, why didn't you leave me where I was? Because the angels, he said, that you've never heard singing like this. So I know you don't believe any of that, but I definitely do. Because you live a little safe life and you suck your little thumb and you point at everybody and say, he's wrong, he's wrong, he's wrong, and you've never done anything. Not all of you, but a lot of you detractors out there need to get off your ass and go do something, and you'll find out, wow, the world is a amazing, it's just an undescribable place, and it has a lot of mysteries. So we're going to end with this. The magnitude of God and how you need to wrap your brain around that. And when people attack that and say, oh, God's contained within this little confine, you say, oh, no, 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 no. Maybe your God is. Yeah, your God? Yeah, probably. Because your brain is inside of a steel box, welded shut by colleges, liars who know the truth. And me? Oh no, my God is huge, massive, beyond description. And what Jesus became is undescribable. It's the union between the organic side and the inorganic side. And there's other halves to the whole enchilada that he united. And his body can pass through solid objects, travel time, do whatever he needs to do. And there's no way to explain that to people other than you just need to believe this because I've showed you the Greek description of the underworld in the form of the periodic table and the lower, second, and third stories of Noah's Ark, and it fits the biblical description pretty damn good. And they're saying, oh yeah, we created the stone cutters and their secret societies created the Bible, the pyramids, and yada yada. No, no way. God is way beyond them. Doesn't need those people. So we're going to leave it at that. Thanks for tuning in. All right, well, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and check us out in the links and descriptions below.